if you're just building a very beautiful graphically game, but it just doesn't play right, I mean, it's just a waste of time, right?
Mhm.
Like you need to have the resources to not only make that game beautiful, but also function properly.
Mhm.
And if you feel like you're gonna suffer on the functionality side of things, then don't build such a high fidelity game.
Yeah, yeah.
Set back on graphics a bit and focus on your gameplay. And
It's like the game has to happen. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Games podcast. I'm Nick,
I'm Arman.
and we are lifelong gamers as well as video game developers. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about graphics versus gameplay and what is shaping the future of gaming. So this is a pretty interesting one because there's been a lot of stuff going on in terms of AI stuff, studio closures, and I think a lot of the landscape of what's been going on is going to obviously affect the games we play.
It's been shifting for sure.
Yeah. And I think we haven't quite seen the impacts of this yet because a lot of the games we're playing like this year, for example, is stuff that has been in development for the past couple years, right?
5 years, yeah.
So it's almost like I feel like we probably won't really see that big shift for another couple years from now.
I agree.
But I definitely think we are going to see some weird stuff happening. So
all the inception of the ideas is happening right now.
Yeah.
And in the last year, so people who want to be first to market on a lot of these new ideas, new tech, like they're kind of meeting behind, the closed doors and kind of getting things like, moving in the background.
Yes.
So, I think there's a lot of topics to go over that we can talk about for this. So
For sure.
let's jump into it, I guess.
Well, before we get into it, we do want to mention that we are developing a game called Traveler's Refrain, which you can play a demo now on Steam. And Traveler's Refrain is a 2D hand-painted action RPG about a wandering musician who ventures into a mysterious forest. He gets a magical instrument that he can cast spells with. And we have a Discord. Go hop in our Discord and let us know, please, what you thought of the demo if you get a chance to play. But why don't we start off with this? Like, what do you have a preference of graphics versus gameplay? Do you think there's like an overlap? Can a game have really good graphics and really good gameplay, or really bad graphics but really good gameplay?
When I was younger, I think I gravitated more towards games with better graphics just because they were so cool in the time. Like, right now, it's like the graphical changes are so small.
Yeah.
But back then, the graphical leaps were a lot bigger.
Yeah.
So when you saw a game that like came out that had really sick graphics, you're like, yo, I have to play that. Like Drakengard.
Yes.
Like stuff like that. When games like that came out, we were like, holy crap, like I need to play that game. Metroid Prime, like all these games.
Dude, I remember seeing Mario 64 coming off of Super Nintendo before and just being like, you can actually move the camera?
Yeah.
You can, like, he can run in a 3D space? Like, what is going on?
Yeah. So, so games like that, like, really kind of, I feel like it was a different period in time for me at least, but I feel like back then it was highly graphics driven because when we were kids, we would just kind of play whatever we had.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, you would play a game that has like a 6 or 7 rating on the internet, but it's so fun. Like, okay, maybe it looks crap, but like the game was nostalgic and it was fun. So I feel like, a lot of the time back then it was driven by graphics, but nowadays I feel like I'm not so like crazy about graphics anymore, even though like nice graphics are definitely nice.
Yeah.
But I game on PC and like I don't have the top end PC. I have a decently, strong PC, but I care more about like having fun and like, having a good experience in a game. Like with graphics, it's like I've kind of seen it already.
Yeah. It's almost like we're jaded or something in terms of the graphics.
Like I played The Witcher 3 and like Cyberpunk, and I'm like, these games are gorgeous. It's like, and they're so big too. It's like I just wanted to play a game that was kind of like, something more casual or more fun, or like I'm playing Pikmin recently, and it's like you just stop and look at the environment, like the lighting and everything is beautiful, but it's like, it's just Switch graphics,
Yeah.
But the gameplay is super fun, and that's what's been kind of holding me together on it. So I don't know. That's my thought. What about you?
I think to put into context, we're like in our early 30s, so we have seen those big, huge jumps. Like the biggest one I remember seeing was Final Fantasy X, because that game, and even if you look at it now compared to the other PS2 games, and I guess that was GameCube time as well, right? So you look at that game and you're like, wow, this is leaps and bounds ahead of anything else. So yeah, I remember at the time being like, holy crap, this is gorgeous. But I think nowadays, in terms of graphics that really surprise me, that draw me to a game, is something that has a bit more of a stylized look, but is still like beautiful. Like everyone, compares games to like, oh, it's like you're playing a Pixar movie. So like we're gonna talk about this a little bit later, but Kena Bridge of Spirits is one that I'm playing right now. And then I've also played I didn't play the new Ratchet and Clank yet, but I played the one that was kind of like a remake of the original. But I remember playing that and being like, holy crap, it literally does feel like you're playing a Pixar movie.
Right.
So of course too, yeah, I like the aesthetic of really realistic graphics too. And sometimes I'm like, especially when you're walking in a forest environment or like a rocky environment, and you're like, this looks real.
We love forests.
We love forests here. But
yeah.
But yeah,
it doesn't look like a copy pasted environment.
Yeah. And I think some of the other things that are what's pushing graphics forward right now, and that's defining the future of gaming, is a couple things. Like you said, like lighting is one of the things, because you can have a not so great model, but if your lighting is insanely like realistic and you have ray tracing and all of that kind of stuff, it makes the world feel realistic, even if the character model itself isn't like totally realistic. So I think that's what's been making Switch games in particular like really beautiful, is like they're kind of understanding with their limitations how they can utilize lighting and color and aesthetic to make the graphical fidelity really like poppy. Right.
If you stop and look in Pikmin 4, the ground is still just like a texture.
Oh.
But there's like plants and stuff like around.
Yeah.
But like you look at the ground and it just looks like, I don't know, tumbleweed. Someone smushed a tumbleweed down or something,
So on the opposite spectrum of that, I feel like there's other games that are coming out by particularly indie studios, obviously, that are like have really either weird or rudimentary graphics that are shaping the way for gameplay and mechanics. So like the first one that comes to my mind is Inscription.
Right.
Because that game is like super weird, and I would say they're kind of like, let's call it on the higher end of indie kind of pixel graphics, and there are some 3D areas, spoilers, but it's they're kind of shaping the way in terms of mechanics. And there's other games too that are still doing pixel stuff that like have really tight mechanical gameplay. So like Celeste is another example of that.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely think there's crossover, and I think I agree with you where it's kind of like for a game to capture me nowadays, it has to have, in terms of graphics, has to have a unique element to it. So I'd say right now I am a bit more drawn to mechanics. I will say in general, this is kind of aside from our topic, but I'm drawn to story more than anything, if I'm totally being honest.
I think you're more so drawn to the hack and slash. Like you're just...
I like that, but
like mess shit up. Like
I do, but I also, like I said, I like Inscription.
Yeah.
Like, I liked Celeste. I like a game that it's like the vibe maybe more than anything, right? That kind of draws me. And you can have a crazy vibe with really good graphics, and you can have a crazy vibe with like really rudimentary graphics.
Yeah, I think graphics can really elevate gameplay if done properly. Like if you're just building a very beautiful graphically game, but it just doesn't play right, I mean, it's just a waste of time, right? Like you need to have the resources to not only make that game beautiful, but also function properly. And if you feel like you're gonna suffer on the functionality side of things, then don't build such a high fidelity game. Set back on graphics a bit and focus on your gameplay. And
it's like the game has to have the whole package, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and that's why like mostly AAA studios are making these gorgeous, like amazing games, right? Because they have the bandwidth to do it.
Yeah.
And they have the testers. They have all like things like in between animations of stuff, like where a character would like instead of like rotating on their feet, they can actually move their legs in turn. Like stuff like that is the little things that kind of like compound, and subconsciously the player is seeing those. And they're like, this is a high quality game.
Yeah.
This wasn't rushed. So I feel like if you're going to go down that route, you have to do all these other things, unfortunately, because that's what the best games are doing. So when somebody who plays these really amazing games, they come and see a game that has unfinished animations and things like that in the 3D space, they're kind of like, this game looks like crap.
Yeah, or it has that kind of like indie jank to it that I feel like we see sometimes where it's like, yeah, the game might be cool, but like you said, it just feels like there's a weird choppiness to it or something like that. So
yeah, and at times it's indie jank can be maybe a little unavoidable because of resource and bandwidth. I mean, if you're making an indie game, you have a timeline, right? Or maybe you don't. But at some point, you're going to have to get the game done, right?
Yeah.
And if you're adding all this nuance to your animations and your art, like, you could extend your scope out like so far. Yeah. So, it's just kind of like a balance,
we know this
right?
this firsthand.
We do, yeah. But we're making a 2D game, so I guess there's some application there to what we're doing in terms of our animations. I mean, for us, everything is hand painted and is frame by frame. So it's like, whereas an animator can just, like a 3D animator can just say, move the arm like this in a motion setting. Like, we actually have to draw like 3 or 4 frames. And how long does that take to draw just like a hand motion?
Just a hand motion, not
everything.
Not super long. It's like if we're talking about a whole character, even just doing a simple motion. Yeah, I mean, it takes 30 minutes to an hour to do like 3 or 4 frames, So yeah, it adds up over time. What's interesting going off of what we're talking about though is the discussion of like the AI stuff and the just things getting more available. So even let's maybe move AI discussion to a little bit later. One of the things that I'm thinking about is just how easy it is, for example, to download an asset pack. Even for environments, let's say, right? Like nobody's really going to play your game and care, especially if you're an indie or smaller studio, if you downloaded like a tree asset that still fits with the aesthetic of your game. Right. So it is interesting how more complicated type projects can be put together now by smaller teams. Yeah,
I mean, there's the instance of kit bashing and stuff like that, which is like, if you're kit bashing and you're putting out a game, like, it's fine if that's what you want to do, but at the end of the day, it might not look very original.
Yeah, I think there's like a range of this though. There's like the fully kit bash games where it's like you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
But then I'm sure there's other instances of like even AA or indie games, even AAA games. Like nobody's gonna like model. I mean, I'm not saying nobody, but like a box, like a wooden box. A crate.
I'm sure I've seen the same crate in 10 different games.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how many times you have to remake a crate?
Exactly.
Just use the crate that somebody else made. It's fine. Like,
or you
I wouldn't feel bad about
paint
that.
A little stripe on it or something like that.
No, I think research and finding tools to speed up the process are all part of game development.
Yeah.
It's all like, don't reinvent the wheel. People who code, we look online for, code that other people have written.
Yeah,
it's like, why would we sit there and spend like 8 hours trying to code this ourselves when
somebody else has done it and put it online publicly?
Yeah, there's no shame in that. I mean, unless you're building your own mechanics, then you're going to have to figure everything out yourself.
Yeah.
But, if the tool's already out there, like, go find it and use it. Any improvement in speed is a huge boon.
Yeah. Well, okay, so going off of that, though, what do you think about the AI stuff? Like, do you think we're going to get to this point where we're not even going to need a 3D modeler anymore because you can kind of just have an AI system do a stylized 3D model?
Here's what I'll say about AI, right? It's not there yet.
Yeah.
It's not there yet.
Yeah.
And it's not there in coding either. And I know this because I've asked the Chat GPT or Copilot, I've asked them to solve coding problems for me. And they're not that good at solving coding problems, unfortunately. So for me,
I think I think maybe just from knowing game development ourselves, a lot of times when we have a coding problem, it's so specific to the thing that we're doing.
Right. It needs context.
It needs context.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's part of it too. It's like it needs context. It only knows what you give it or what you ask of it. It's a computer. So like in the writing space, I think Copilot and all these AI tools, they're pretty nice.
Yeah.
Image generation, cool, fine. But like for game development, I still think it's for entertainment in general, like putting something together, I feel like it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be there for a long time, unfortunately, because like you said, there's so many...
Unfortunately or fortunately, though, do you really want to make a game that's got like full AI?
No, but I mean, if AI can
garbage in
assist
it.
in some way in creation, for example, like if we have animations and we're like, we tell the AI, hey, write, animation, come up with like 10 animations using these art pieces, right? And it just makes like 10 for you based
Yeah.
on like something it finds on the internet. Sweet.
Yeah.
I'll use that. I'll use that. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not an
it's-
art. I mean, I used to be an artist. I'm not an artist anymore, but hey, I mean, if I'm programming, I'm making a game myself, like I would use that tool.
Sure. But then do you feel like we're going to see at one point so many of the same animations that the AI is generating in so many games that you're like, it's all starting to look homogenous?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. I think after you make it though, you can always go in and change it
Sure.
to kind of. It's kind of like, dude, you can
Like
copy
getting
my
the-
homework, but like just change like
Or getting
a
the
word or
crate
two.
and
Yeah.
and remodeling it a little
Right,
bit or
like
whatever.
give it a different texture
Yeah.
or something like that, right? Yeah, I just don't think it's there yet, and honestly, I don't like it to begin with, like the fact that it's like affecting a lot of the artists in the world. So I think it's pretty messed up, but I think we just need to just be cautious with it.
Sure. Yeah.
So
yeah, kind of going off of what we were just talking about in terms of making life easier. I feel like I said before, I started playing Kina, and that's one of those games that you play that thing, man, and you're like, this is a quality game. Like every aspect of it, the art, the cutscenes, the voice acting, the mood, the gameplay itself. Game is really freaking hard too, I will say. Like surprisingly hard on normal mode. And you know me, I'm like a Souls player too. But yeah, it's I don't think a game like that could have been made 10 years ago, and not even in the context of the type of game it is, I guess.
Really?
Is
You
what I'm
think so?
saying. Yeah, it's so it literally looks like a AAA game with like a $50 million budget. Let's put it that way. And maybe scope wise, it has the budget that it was allotted. But we kind of looked into it, and it's like, it definitely didn't have a small budget, like a $10,000 budget,
Right.
but it's definitely like an indie to double A kind of game. And I just think that like the tools that are available to people nowadays are making things so much easier to do something so impressive like that. And that is an example of, I mean, I can't say for certainty, but I'm almost positive that probably every single asset, even every single tree branch and plant in that game is a unique graphic,
Oh, okay.
a unique asset. So it's kind of crazy like what they're able to do. It literally looks like the other example I'd given before, like Ratchet and Clank, which was Insomniac, which is a AAA studio, so I know they had, Kena had like a decent amount of funding or whatever, but like I said, it's like a studio 10 years ago that wasn't a AAA studio couldn't have done something of that quality. I think 10 years ago, it was still like indie, what you were, what you'd think of when you think of an indie game.
Right.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like all these people that are leaving the AAA industry from the closures, they're all going out and doing their own things, and they're making these amazing like indie games that look like AAA. And there's a reason, because they're seasoned developers, and they have all this knowledge and the connections and they know what it takes to make good games, and they're able to just kind of in the same amount of time that like if we were to do that game, it would take us like 10 years, but they could probably do it in 4.
Yeah,
because they just have that experience.
I think honestly that those are the types of games I'm most excited for, because I think they'll be more in the, like, let's call it AA genre, which I think we haven't seen a lot of in recent years. It's like either been really indie or really AAA. And I think that when you're in the AA range, you're not playing around with a $50 million budget. You can kind of take a bit more risk and kind of inject a bit more passion. And I think going back to the AAA stuff, like from the top of the conversation, what we're seeing of is a lot of, I don't want to call it copy and paste, but it's like, look at any of the big AAA games nowadays, like Spider-Man, God of War, even like Final Fantasy 16, they're all third-person action games with RPG mechanics. It's like I don't want to call it the same thing, but I talked to Paloma about this on an earlier podcast, but it's like, it's the kind of game where you hold R2 and the panel pops out, and then you get to pick your ability from the face buttons, and there's a cooldown, like mask semblance. Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's like a certain style of gameplay, which I gotta say, I love those kinds of games, but that's why they keep making them, because they know people gravitate towards them.
Yeah, and I think a part of it has to do with like people feel comfortable playing those games. So it's like games that break into a new genre, they have to be really good, or else or like a new style, it has to be good, or else people will just play and be like, meh.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the only reason that well, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that Black Myth Wukong is doing so insanely good is because we had like 15 years of Souls games, or however many years of Souls games now, for people to be like, I love this genre.
Right.
Now more and more people are like putting money into like let's throw as much money into a high quality one of these as we can, even though we're not from software, And we've heard that there's like been bugs and stuff with that game, but in terms of the gameplay itself, I've heard it's amazing, top notch, and honestly, the graphics in that game look way, 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 way better than Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It looks insane, dude.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not sure though. Chat, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's got any multiplayer aspect. So if I had to guess why Elden Ring can't put all of its eggs in the basket of graphical fidelity, it's got to be because they have to deal with like servers and online.
Can you play online together?
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah, you can like invade each other's worlds and like kill people and stuff.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can also, I think, do like multiplayer adventuring as well.
Oh.
It's kind of like weird. You like have to use like items to make those things happen.
Oh.
It's not like you just click in the menu, I want to play multiplayer or whatever.
Oh.
So it's weird. I never really experimented with it, but that might be one of the things that's kind of hindering that graphical fidelity. But that's another good example of like they weren't like, oh, we're going to make this the most epically beautiful game you've ever seen. They're just like, yeah, it looks really good and it looks like a modern game, but like we're going to make the gameplay in this so diverse and excellent that it's going to sell a bajillion copies, and our investors are going to love the return that they've made on this game.
Yeah.
So yeah. We also wanted to talk about like mobile, because that's like a whole other beast when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, no, mobile is it's just a very strange landscape, I feel like, because not only is it so congested with just like garbage, it's just the way that they lure you in is just so weird. Like, we're talking about graphical versus gameplay, and a lot of these mobile games, they have like really crisp graphics, like really nicely like vector graphics, right? I think vector graphics are the ones that kind of like excel in this space.
Or you go down the route of what is it called, Genshin Impact, where that looks beautiful too.
Yeah, but
it's still a mobile game,
Yeah, and I think for those games, they have these beautiful graphics that kind of draw you in. And then they have these like clicky mechanics that just suck the money out of you.
In game development, we call it juiciness, right?
Right,
you click the button and it goes boing, and then boing,
you got a gift.
Yeah,
it's like 10 coins, but
then
it costs 100 coins to like
redeem it, and then you got to go through like 15 menus to like find where it is. And on your way there, it's like buy 16 gems for $49.99.
Yeah. So this is an honest question. Like, is it sustainable to do this? Like, are people still buying these mobile, or like getting these mobile games and just throwing money at them?
So
is this gonna be the next 10 years? Like,
as far as I know, all of these games subsist off of what they call whales. And there's definitely whales in the United States, but like there's other countries that just have, like Dubai is an example, where you have these like literal billionaires, and they're just bored guys, and they're like, I'll put like, $400 into the exclusive waifu outfit, and then the company makes its money. I mean, there are people that literally put like thousands of dollars into these games. I think what's not sustainable is like everybody and their mother wants to make one, so it's like it's kind of getting more and more. But what I'm starting to notice now is games like Genshin Impact. It's kind of like they have this phase where it's like they, as far as I know, they're building another one, or they've just built another. It's like Honkai Rail, whatever, Star Rail or whatever.
Yeah,
it's the same company, and they're probably just like, okay, you were bored with the fantasy setting. Here's now a bit of a sci-fi aesthetic or whatever. Right. We're just gonna bring our player base to the new game and have them start buying waifu outfits in the new game.
Yeah. So I think in direction there, it's like I think graphics is definitely leading the charge in mobile, and the gameplay portion is just that addiction part, like the addicting part of logging in, getting stuff. The gameplay is sometimes really fun, and that's the problem, is that it's so fun and it looks really good, and before you're done playing it, you've spent like $300, you know, when you could have just spent $40 on it and just enjoyed it. You know? But you know, most people are not going to drop $40 right off the bat, so it's.
Do you have all these apps on your phone where you've like gotten an ad for a game, you've downloaded it, and then you've literally never opened it?
I've done that before. I actually just started playing one. I think it's called like Total War or something. I've gotten so many ads for it that I was like, you know what? I'm just going to like play it and see what it is, see what it's like. Dude, the first like minute, I was literally clicking on the screen and it's like, build your thing here, it was literally doing like 20 things for me, and I had no clue. I was like half paying attention. I was like, okay. Where's the gameplay? Where's the gameplay? Okay, I built the barracks. That's cool. That is
the gameplay, dude.
Dude, it's just so stupid. And then like the actual gameplay was kind of fun, but I could just already feel like I did like the easy like missions, and now I'm starting to get to like the harder ones, and every time I lose, it gives me this pop-up like, oh, here's like an ultra strong character that you can buy for $1.
Yeah. I just got an ad for one. I haven't played it yet, but it's a tactical RPG and it looks like Final Fantasy Tactics. It's like the original one.
Right. I've probably seen that too.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
It looks really, really cool. There's like an ad that plays. That was my baby outside. There's an ad and it's like, all I know is there's like a little like pixel NPC like shooting an arrow at another little guy. But I don't know. That one looks really cool. Yeah. I don't know. We're kind of getting away from the main topic, but yeah, mobile games are like definitely their own their own beast.
All right, so based off all these topics that we talked about today, what do you foresee in the next like 5 to 10 years in terms of graphics versus gameplay, and what do you want to see?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is something we actually didn't really quite touch on, but we've seen from the closures of the studios that I think it is starting to get a bit unsustainable for these companies to throw $100 million at a game that they're not entirely sure is going to at least make $100 million back, right? That's why they're closing in the first place. So I do think that, like we said before, a lot of these AAA devs have been splitting off, starting their own studios, and we're going to start to see some of these mid-tier AA games that maybe they will have the graphical fidelity of a AAA game, but they're not going to have that grand scope of like, here's a 200-hour-long experience and it has multiplayer and all of this junk. And honestly, I'm kind of okay with that, because we have talked about this in other podcasts where it's like games are getting really long, and I'd rather play like Kena, a 10-hour-long game or a 15-hour-long game that's gorgeous and to the point, and then the studio makes another one of those games in a couple years instead of waiting 5 years between 100-hour-long experiences.
Is Kena linear?
It's pretty linear. Okay. I mean, it's an open world. It has a linear storyline, but you can kind of backtrack with your new abilities.
Okay. Yeah. A bit of Metroidvania going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love Metroidvania.
Yeah. That's awesome. But yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that's changing in the future is the, advancements in technology, as we've seen throughout all of game dev history, right? But also the people that are working on the projects and the accessibility of like anyone just really being able to download Unity or Unreal and start kind of toying around with it.
I'll tell you what though, the stuff I've seen from Unreal Engine 5, the like hyper realistic stuff.
Oh yeah.
That looks cool.
Yeah.
See, that's the type of graphical leap that I'm talking about that gets me like interested in graphics again.
Yeah.
like that kind of stuff. And I feel like that might kind of kick me back into like the high end graphic, like craving.
Like I need the $1,000 graphics card.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, $1,000 isn't even a good is a decent graphics card now. So it's crazy. Pretty crazy how inflated the graphics prices are. Anyway,
I'm a console gamer, so I don't deal with it.
I don't have a PS5. I have a PS4. And so I play on PC and I try to I try to squeeze out graphics out of it, but it's like sometimes the games don't stay at 60 FPS. It's like So I try to play at 120, but it'll dip.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been a fun discussion. Let us know in the comments what you guys think is going to be the future of gameplay. Is it going to be gaming? Is it going to be gameplay or is it going to be graphics? What do you kind of gravitate towards more? Also, be sure to check out the Traveler's Refrain demo on Steam, and we will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.
See ya.